the Asidama Wadi, Medin Francis Sanctuary, Reverend Obofour no be any. Your Excellency, what is Sir Akonya Kasia by Wafre Wadin call for Sir Yameshia. To me, that is not the first time. Menkai Waya, I'm saying when you kakra of fear. Drew ya na wa recommend this Yama me Mompai. Me was a major fever can cry. Me bro funyina ekoi because I say, hey. Last time so anniversary me drew her na say me metra wonche. E di dance here say nye na wo pe bibi. Enti na ofre onyame nkofo. Asabi me aka ni ba me Ghana ni. Ye nyina ni say sankofa de ye nchini. If some be near friend sankofa. Enti coming back is not a taboo. But I send be and I have it. Maybe buy a letter by some memory. We were born for money. Let's be honest to ourselves. Make country. Now they all from not to the Mbusao. Yaya, I didn't call for. Obi born a bra, or ye be billion ya, or Dimrika, saw them or dinner name Kobutu. Won't you mean Jubilee House? Till 7 the Yaya horn and a cashier per go. Mr. One idiot, Kasa. I'm saying, Yama, there be a yenny part that there was setana. I will be a bobra or pesa. Nensa can be. So busy died in it 3 atum. Yante cement in some campaign near the Estroya and Monka Hoson Komoka cement Yamea Dona Bedra. Iron Ross. And once a busy say. As you will be full throttle, can no none sika or de tokoko no the akano coins or the full throttle. And throttle no emsa ofra aya ye bo achibidin wada o masenya me bo na bedura hoso nkomo ebe wie sai na first no bisi ba me kopa jeans bi hye onya t-shirt bi a o de ahye so dollar no sese edi nkomo foforo ebe se 2 coin just cedi no wada o ma se de ye twi ne ye ken ya me ya do na bedura dollar no ehun nkomo ebe si sai ne kura se de me ko bi na man ka bi nti me ka bi Mr. Wani de pa etwa to se nyame aya adomo a otutu nan na ode ukọ nkunum de ne animonyam yi se ye wade pa ene de wo hia asofo bedu se wade de ukotena abanwa kase no so na se duru se so wada roma biem e na wasan kai na mafra asofo so se yeso se bi nya politicians kwa na adwene wo mutirim na mo ne ye hia biem na de wo yeso yetirim no yeso yakasa bi wiase se bi anya ado nya oba akofo nko na ne nanane abrewa nti no se base se ye betu anamo no ne nyina ye mra ne ye ntu a ekowie mu die so aye amomfre ye nyina so ne nsa mehia ne nyina ye.
Thank you very much.
That
is Reverend Obofour.
Reverend Obofour eka enyoma boa ye den I just say next opesu sidan cement ye ton 1 million Ghana cedis per bag ye den pa ma obia odansi for Osha inflation so called esro and now kojuma what's about china and yoma nina bo epega na nina fi se yesika sem senia asay edruno and no nama and yoma abeyesa eka abedaya so apart from that and so we share 2021 to 2022 abine eje Bosnia Ifri Central Bank to the tune of more than 70 billion cedis. Na se oye economics ya catch say sika be dos wo kroma e ma inflation kosoro because obi ekuta sika ni bi because it's too much money chasing too few goods. Enti eno enso so na ye famu because of the massive injection buying eje Bosnia from Bank of Ghana at the toll system no mu afi na Bank of Ghana pese etwetwe sika ni free economy no se na be ya ebema enyoma ebo ayemre kakra and na me share they are introducing a gold coin so that people who have excess money will buy the gold coin so that they can mop up more of the currency from the system. Nti eno nyina enyoma ebeye Yenibriasem, the first thing we are going to concentrate on is stabilizing the economic environment and stabilizing the currency. Because Osha, maybe a dollar ne CD exchange rate na be kosro no na bibia bo e kosro. Nti ose yetimi eye ne abetimi ama yesika ne ejina faako se ne be ya ebema enoma yemre kakra maye enhyemu a yehyemu yi enye ni twato a yebɛhyem me hye obo se nyame adom oyame adom na mebedi o mampanya afibia yebenya akwanya ne hyiase. The banks that were closed, the problem with the banks existed when I was president, and it came as part of the national economic briefs that I used to get, and also the security briefs I used to get. But we looked at it multidimensionally, that we needed to do something to save the banks. And so what we did was we gave some liquidity support, and then apart from that, we were passing depositors' guarantee bills and so on and so forth to create a better legislative framework to guide the banks. And the intention was that once we cross the hurdle into the next administration, we will take a decision on how to work it out. It's not rocket science. It's been done in this country before. We had the Financial Sector Adjustment Program, FinSAP, for those of you who would remember. And at that time, what the government did was we took all the toxic assets and liabilities off the books of the bank, and we gave it to a body called the Non-Performing Assets Recovery Trust. And then we cleaned up the books of the banks, improved their supervision, while the Non-Performing Assets Recovery Trust went after the liabilities in order to recoup what had been taken, the debts that had been taken off. And it worked. The banks came back to good health, and they continued to do their work. When the world financial crisis happened, the Bank of Scotland was in trouble and was in danger of collapsing because of liquidity challenges. What did the Bank of England do? They gave them money, and they took equity in the bank, and they put Bank of England supervisors in the bank. They worked with the management until the bank recovered and paid the loan that the Bank of England gave gradually. Today, the Bank of Scotland is one of the strongest banks that you have in UK. And so we could have used the same, the same method. What the banks needed to be able to survive would not have exceeded, it's estimated about 9 billion cedis to save them. So government could have advanced that money and then cleaned off the liabilities and taken equity and released the equity back gradually to them as they paid back. Unfortunately, government decided to shut them down. And when they shut them down, together with all the savings and loans companies and all of them, they created a debt of 25 billion. And so you solve a 9 billion problem with a 25 billion CD debt. I mean, nobody does that. And look at the kind of dislocation it caused. A lot of those people, he says, are Uber drivers. I mean, I know one who is a baker. She set up a bakery now. She's a banking professional. And a friend of our family was working in the bank. And so she came to me for support. I bought some ovens for her. And she's baking bread and meat pie and things instead of, doing accounting and what she was doing before. And so it has caused a lot of social dislocation. 2 of my daughter's mates in school had to be withdrawn because their parents, who were both bankers, had lost their jobs and they could no longer afford to pay the fees in the school in which my daughter was. So if you think about the social dislocation it has caused, I think that the decision was hasty. It is part of the reason we're facing this crisis, because that banking sector clean out debt was added onto our liabilities, because government guaranteed the deposits. And so if you guarantee the deposits, then you have the obligation to pay for the monies that had been lost as a result. So I would have done it differently, but the reality is that it was done, and now we have to face the crisis for it. I've said that we'll relook at it, because what it has done is it has wiped out indigenous participation in our finance and banking sector. These were the banks that were owned by Ghanaians. Most of the banks that are left are foreign-owned banks. And they found themselves in this difficulty because they were the ones lending to small and medium enterprises. And small and medium enterprise lending is the riskiest part of banking. The big banks don't want to do it. And so it's those small Ghanaian banks that were doing it. And that's why they got into trouble. And so we had an obligation to save them. Unfortunately, we didn't. We flushed them down the drain. And you can't go to the Access of this world or the Stanbics of this world as a small baker and go and get the same kind of attention and finance that you would have got from UT Bank or Unibank or one of them. So we're saying that we'll restore Ghanaians' participation in the banking and finance sector, because who owns your banking asset is a national security issue. We must not have our banking sector dominated only by foreign banks. We must have indigenous banks that are owned by Ghanaians. Reverend Benson talked about the unanimous FC and how will Operation Recover all the loot work when the judiciary has been packed, with judges. We have been drawing attention to this. This president has appointed more judges than all the judges appointed by all presidents from independence. No, that's true. From Nkrumah to my administration, if you calculate all the judges appointed, this president has appointed in 8 years more judges than all judges in history. And the appointment of judges is a very crucial thing in every country. In US, they have a limit on the number of justices of the Supreme Court. So everybody is praying that there will be precedent when a vacancy occurs on the Supreme Court so that they can appoint one justice. Unfortunately, there's no cap here in Ghana, and so this president has taken the opportunity to appoint as many judges as possible on the Supreme Court and even the appeal courts. We don't have enough appeal courts. I think we have 2 appeal courts, or there was one in Tamale, I hear it's been closed down. And yet we have about more than 50 appeal court judges. And as for high court judges, just yesterday he was swearing in another 21. And it gives the impression that the courts are being packed for exactly the reason you are talking about, that once they appoint the judges, if cases involving accountability for abuse of public office come before the judges, because they appointed them, they would leave them off the hook. We will do our part. We'll let the anti-corruption institutions work. And my trust and belief is that our judges will do the work that they have been appointed to do. They should look at the cases impartially and let justice prevail. After all, if somebody has been involved in wrongdoing, it is our taxpayers' money, including the judges' taxpayers' money, that has been misappropriated. And so he should look at the facts of the case. And if wrongdoing has been done, to do justice the way they should do it. I mean, our judges have security of tenure. You cannot remove them from office. And so they have nothing to fear. It doesn't matter who appointed you. Once you have been appointed, you cannot be removed by any precedent. And so my expectation is that they'll use their conscience and they would use their belief in whatever religion that they are part of to do justice when the cases come before them. I don't want any innocent person jailed, but when the things come, they should look at the facts of the case and judge it accordingly. They say the law is an ass, and so sometimes it will go anywhere you kick it. And so sometimes technicalities and things are used to get people off the hook. But it's my hope and prayer that we would gather the evidence, the anti-corruption institutions will do the investigations, and then when the facts are there, we'll go and put it before the judges, and the rest is left to their discretion. The second one was about Christians participating in politics. I believe more Christians and more people of faith should participate in politics. Prophet Wilson talked about an imam asking all Muslims to vote for a Muslim candidate. I think I saw the video too, and I thought it was most unfortunate because the office we're vying for is not an office that we're being elected to deal with the spiritual. We're being elected to manage the country and manage the citizens of this nation. Yes, we need spiritual guidance, we need prayers and intercession, but the qualification for doing that does not mean that one must be of a certain religion or not. And so if we were appointing a new pope, of course, you must be Catholic to become a pope. If we're appointing a new bishop, you must belong to that church to be a bishop. If we're appointing a new general superintendent for Assemblies of God, you cannot come from anywhere and come and be elected as general superintendent. If they are electing a new national chief imam, of course, Pastor Wengam cannot go and become a new national chief imam. So you have to elect a Muslim. So we're not electing leaders of religious denominations. We're electing leaders to lead the nation. And so I do think that as much as possible the discourse should not bring our religion in. Let's look at the people who are offering themselves and let us, based on our assessment of what we think is possible and what they can do, elect the best person to lead this country. And so I'll say what he did was unfortunate, but of course people get very emotive when it gets to issues of politics, and especially when it comes to who becomes the president. With regards to the audit of the register, like I said, they are at an IPAC meeting. I hope that they'll be able to resolve this, because we think that the Electoral Commission should do its work properly, and that's why we are putting a lot of pressure on them. Look at what happened during the district assembly elections. They told us they were ready. Everything was set for the district assembly elections. On that day, all of us were ready. Remember that on the day of the district assembly elections, half of the country did not vote because the Electoral Commission was not ready. It didn't have the right registers at the right places and all that kind of thing. You saw the commotion that it caused. So part of us voted today and the other part voted tomorrow. Can you imagine if this happens during the presidential elections, that on the day we find out that, you know, things are so disorganized that some parts of the country are not voting, or they are late in voting and all that? Can you imagine the chaos it will cause?